Welcome to another edition of a program, Flip Chart, a collaboration between Flip TV and The Point newspapers. My guest today is a big fish. He's Chief Olusegun Okikiola Aremu Obasanjo. Obasanjo was Nigeria's former political and military leader between 1976 and 1979. He was also elected Nigerian president between 1999 and 2007. His life is as colorful as his personality. I promise you it's going to be an interesting interview with Baba. Come along with me.
My beginning in life is what I will call hard beginning. Hard beginning because I was born in a village. There was no school in my village. My father was total illiterate. My mother was total illiterate. And when I was born, nobody would think that I would be anything other than a farmer, because that was what was known in my village. You are either a farmer, or at best, you will be learning to make implements for farming, cutlass and hoes. And that will be a step higher than just being a farmer. But my father and my mother were very industrious. My father particularly will not condone any indolence. My father believed that any man who woke up in the morning and he was not found on his farm from our village or the villages around us should be regarded not as a man. My mother would go from one market to another. So I was born in a village. I was born not with silver spoon, not even with wooden spoon in my mouth, but I was born by a father and a mother who were very industrious, very respected within the community that we were. They were people of integrity. People will come to my mother to seek advice, to even ask for assistance, and whatever type of assistance they asked for, my mother will give. My father was even more able to do that than my mother. And I was going to farm with my father. And I got to a stage where, we have, in those days, we had heaps in rows, and the way we weed would be, we weeded our farms row by row, and my father will take a role. I grew up to the point that my father would take a role and I will take a role by his side, but by he helping me, we will finish at the same time. That's how old I was. And one day we were coming back from the farm into the village, and my father asked, "Young man, will you want to do something else other than going to farm with me?" I didn't know where that question came from, why that question should come at all. And I said, "Papa, I will continue to go to the farm with you." I had an older cousin who had just left the village and went to Abeokuta from the village to learn to become a vehicle mechanic. So what I could think of, other than being a farmer going to the farm with my father, was to be a vehicle mechanic. So I said, "Papa, well, if you will send me to where my cousin called Tai had gone, I wouldn't mind." And he said, "Vehicle mechanic? You won't like to go to school?" I said, "Papa, if you send me to school, I will go." And that question and the answer was a turning point, or the question and with the answer was a turning point. And so my father said, "Okay." The end of the year, and of course living in the village, we didn't get information right when schools opened in Abeokuta. And so I was brought to Abeokuta, but I was brought late. I should have been in Abeokuta the weekend before school resumed, which should have been, I should have been in Abeokuta by Saturday, the preceding the school resumption on a Monday. But we arrived on a Wednesday, 2 days after schools have resumed. And we went to 5 schools that are close enough to our compound. These were close enough so that I could go on foot from the compound to the school. One was the African church school, Itayalode. Another one was Owu Baptist Day School in Totoro. Another one was Ogbe Methodist School. Another one was Igbore Anglican School. Now, I was turned down in all the 5 schools. And my father said, "Okay, look, you stay with my aunt. And my father's, you stay with your aunt, that's my father's half-sister." So I stayed with my aunt. My uncle-in-law, the husband of my aunt, was a fisherman. So I stayed, and every morning we would go to Ogun River to catch fish. And those who would buy the fish would come and buy, and they would also bring breakfast for us. We would eat breakfast, and after that, we would dry our net and we'll go home. I was doing that, and one day my father came and said, Shobo will turn. Shobo is the name. Was the name of my uncle-in-law. And my father said Shobo will turn his son to a lazy man like himself. So, in anger, he brought me back to the village, and so my Abeokuta becoming civilized got terminated. I went back to the village, and but there was that urge in my father. I wasn't. I didn't have any urge for going to school. There was that urge in my father. My father was a disciplinarian, very, very tough. My mother too was a disciplinarian. And then when you are growing up, these taboos of if you do this, the egungun will appear to you. If you do this, the oro will appear to you and all that. And we were in that sort of thing. But one thing that I found very useful when we were growing up in the village is these riddles and stories, particularly the moonlight stories. With the tortoise and all that. And those were full of moral lessons. And of course, you had that with elders in the family. You sat around them, they told you these stories, and then they also told you the a moral lesson out of it. You must do this, you must be truthful. You see, for not being truthful, this is what landed the tortoise in this problem. It's always around the tortoise, most of the fables and stories. And then you must be honest. See, for the tortoise not being honest, this was the outcome for him. And that I found very, very useful, because it's not just the moral of or the moral lesson of the story, it's also the chorus that go with these stories. You have chorus that we sing and clap and enjoy it. That was very useful. Then, of course, we had a Baptist church, which was a young church when I was born. The church predated my birth, but was still very young, and we were. And the Baptist in those days, and even till today, the Bible, anything not biblical, is not Baptist. It has to be biblical, and you have to learn the Bible almost from Genesis to Revelation, and you know it. And that was, of course, again, very good for bringing you up as a decent human being. You have stories which are repeated to you, different passages in the Bible. You memorize different passages for different locations and for different purposes. And I found that extremely, extremely useful. And you see, another thing that I found useful, the Yoruba has an adage that 4 eyes bring a child to the world, and 200 eyes bring the child up. I think in English they say, well, 4 people bring a child to the world, and a village bring the child up. In Yoruba it says 4 eyes bring a child to the world, and 200 eyes bring it. So you are not just the word of your parents. You are also the word of the community, and the community, of course, take pride in you as the child of the community, not just as the child of your father and your mother. And you know, in Yoruba, my father's cousins cannot introduce me, my father's cousins of about the same age, or brothers of about the same age, they cannot introduce me as a nephew or something like that, because we have no word as nephew in Yoruba. We have no word as niece. Cousin. No. They will introduce me as their son, or and of course you have to behave, and you could be caned, and not I will report you to your father, or I report you to your mother. No, he will, and if you are caned by your father's
brother,
pair, you get home, you get another cane. So of necessity you have to behave. You have to behave to avoid being caned by a family member, and you have to behave to avoid being re-caned when you get home. I think I found all these very, very useful in my own early life, and I believe it's still something that we should cherish today. That especially that idea of 4 eyes bring a child to the world, and 200 eyes bring the child up. You know, in the villages are very close community in those days, very, very close. Well, everybody knows everybody else. And there's no, well, even they know the ones that are of bad behavior within the village, and they may tell you that when you go to the next house, they won't say don't go there. You have to behave yourself, and that means you have to behave yourself. Once they say that, you know that there's a bit of a question mark in that family, and then you know that it's not a place that they want you to be frequently visiting or going. So there's a lot in what I would call our culture, our way of living. Those proverbs that we have in Yoruba, which are very, very rich in interpreting things, in giving meaning into things. And you know, I always say that when I was growing up, sitting at the feet of elders and hearing, listening to them for either the moonlight stories or even just telling stories about things in life, their own experience of life, and what should be do's and don'ts of life were very, very useful. Very useful. So if you say what prepared me for life, I won't say, well, if you like, you say for leadership. I would say, first of all, my parents. Well, first of all, God Almighty, who made me to be born where I was born, when I was born, and by those I was born by. First, God. My parents, who are simple, illiterate, but unassuming. And they wanted the best for me, even though I didn't know beyond the village level. There wasn't anything that I could say, oh yes, oh this is my ambition. What ambition do I have? And my father, who was insistent on me not just remaining on the farm with him. My mother, of course, will insist on me going to fetch water early in the morning, even when I was going to school. The stream is about 2 kilometers. I will have to go and fetch water in the morning. 5 a.m. I've gone out to fetch water by 6 o'clock. I've gone and come back, and then quickly make for school. The school is again about 2.5, 3 kilometers away. Go to school, and then come back, whatever. On the day that we are not going to school, if it's a market day, I will probably go with my mother, carrying kola nut and whatever you have to sell to the market, or I go to the farm with my father. All those chores, if you like, of working with my father, working with my mother, I found them extremely useful in life, because I'm not afraid of undertaking anything, of doing anything. No matter how menial it is or how good it is. I remember when I started my farm, after I've been military head of state, and when vehicles, trailers come carrying maize, and I just turn my back, I just put my back and carry the maize and offload the trailer with my workers, and I say, sir, you can't do this. I say, I can't do what? If you can't do it, I can't do it. And so I believe, and of course, again, like you talk of leadership, what should be the factors? I think, apart from my early life, my life in the army was also very, very contributory. Because the army teaches you to be nothing other than to be a leader. It teaches you to be nothing other than to be a leader. A leader in terms of plenty, a leader in terms of scarcity, a leader in peace, and a leader in war. And that, of course, is something that people need to know. I was lucky. As I said, I went to a mission school from primary. I moved from one mission school to another in primary. I went to a mission school in secondary. And then I even taught in a mission school when I left secondary school. And then I joined the army, which again was all part of leadership preparation, if you like to put it that way. But I believe the most important aspect of leadership is leadership that has the fear of God.
You talked about joining the army. What actually informed your joining the army?
I think it's necessity and curiosity. You know, because of my background, I left school. Oh, well, let me tell you the story of how I left school.
Okay.
That will amuse you a little bit. In my days, we spent 6 years in secondary school. 6 years. But in those days too, in the 50s, in the 1950s, we had the GC. We used to take, initially in my school, Cambridge School Certificate. Then later on it became West African School Certificate. But side by side with Cambridge or West African, you can take London exam GCE. Whereas with Cambridge or school certificate, you will get A and C and all that. With GC, you either get credit or you get F. But for you to take GCE, you must have passed what they call qualifying exam. Qualifying exam is only English, and you must pass that. And then after you have passed the qualifying exam, you can take GCE in any subject that you like, ordinary level. And of course, once you have ordinary level, to take GC advanced level, no problem, you don't need a qualifying exam. So when I was in Form 4, I took GC qualifying exam, and I passed. So when I passed, I then decided, well, should I continue until I get to Form 6 and do school certificate, or should I do GCE in Form 5? I decided to do GCE in Form 5. So I put in, and I passed all the subjects that I put in for in GCE. In Form 5. So I have to again take another decision. Should I leave school? Because the only thing that I can add to that is wait and do a school certificate, and my school was expecting that I will have 8 A's and 9 A's and all that. Okay, but I was working in school as school librarian at that time to pay part of my school fees. On Saturday I would go and fetch firewood and all that. So should I continue this or should I go? So, and what will I add? Nothing really. So I decided to leave school. But leaving school in Form 5, when I should have left in Form 6, meant that I left school with a certificate, the GCE certificate, but I cannot go to the school for a testimonial. I think it's one of my friends used to joke with me. He said, "You have a certificate, but you have no testimonial," which is true. I had a certificate, but I had no testimonial. So, but in those days, well, you left school and you have a certificate, you get a job. By the time I had the result of my GCE by August, and those who are even a year my senior, they will not take their school certificate exam until November. I have had the result of my GC in Form 5 by August, so I decided to stay in school till November and then left. Now, I got a job in USC. Of course, I got a job in government printer in the medical store in Ikeja in the West. So I went to USC because USC was paying 10 shillings a month more than the government. But then I found that when I got to USC, it was becoming a cul-de-sac for me because I wanted to read. My intention was not to say, well, look, now I've got a career in USC. And then you go to USC Monday to Saturday. And then even Monday, you will work till 5 p.m. So time for reading or doing anything. So after 3 months, I said, look, this is not for me. If I really will make progress in life. But the USC thought that I was doing very well. They will send me on courses. I become manager. Look, manager. No, that's not my idea. My idea is go to school. Then I took the exam to University of Ibadan. I passed, but no sponsorship. I said, okay, no, that's all right. I was reading for GCA level. And then I took the Daily Times one day. I saw advertisement for officer cadet in the army. Oh, now it was not the officer cadet that interested me. It was that there would be exam, and then I wanted to test myself in the knowledge that I'm acquiring. So I applied, and then the application was successful. They said I should take a warrant from Ibadan and go to Lagos by train. Well, free travel to Lagos. And I went again. I said, I passed. I should come for interview. Take another warrant from provincial office and travel to Lagos. Oh, wonderful. And then I went for the interview, the medical exam. And then they said, I passed. Now, by then I have applied for UN scholarship for territories, non-self-governing territories. It wasn't popularly known then, but some countries give scholarship to students from non-self-governing territories. I have applied. I wanted to do geology in UCLA, and I've got admission. Then I got the military. So what do I do? Yeah, I had a road junction. What should I do? So I decided, okay, can they defer my scholarship? They were ready to defer my scholarship by 1 year. Good. So let me try this military thing. It was so I went. I had a senior cousin who said, "You are." I asked. He was a senior cousin. He said, "You are a stupid boy. Why don't you give me that scholarship?" And then, so I then went to Ghana. When we were in Ghana, it became when we went to Gold Coast, it became Ghana, and I passed after 6 months, and we had to go to the UK for further training. So I just left the scholarship. So otherwise, I would probably have been a geologist. So I miss that. But then my ambition to continue to read, I was able to get that going in the military. I wanted to, and then I transferred to the Corps of Engineers, and I continue now training as an engineer in the military. And so, as I said, I went into the army by necessity and curiosity, but it turned out to be not too bad for me.